Welcome, murderers or wanderers, whichever you want to be called. This is Mandy,
This is the second guy.
Cameron, and we wanted to take a minute and talk about Odin's Ordeal, which is featured in the Havamal, which is part of the larger collection of poetry called the Poetic Edda. And that was recently featured in our Liminal Spaces episode. Especially since Cameron wasn't there for Liminal Spaces, I thought this would be a really good opportunity to at least get some kind of input from him. We'll be back after the music. What is this? What did you mean by that? And I feel like my takeaway was this. And can you clarify that? So, listeners, this is Odin's Ordeal. This is a clip from the Liminal Spaces. This is the story of Odin, who hung from Yggdrasil. From the Poetic Edda, translated and edited by Jackson Crawford. I know that I hung on a wind-battered tree 9 long nights, pierced by a spear and given to Odin, myself to myself, on that tree, whose roots grow in a place no one has ever seen. No one gave me food. No one gave me drink. At the end, I peered down. I took the runes. Screaming, I took them. And then I fell. I learned 9 spells from the famous son of Bolthorn, the father of Bestla, and I won a drink of that precious mead poured from Othrerir. My imagination expanded. I became wise. I grew and I thrived. One word chased another word, flowing from my mouth. One deed chased another deed, flowing from my hands. You will find runes, runic letters to read, very great runes, very powerful runes, which Odin painted, and which the holy gods made, and which Odin carved. Odin carved for the gods, and Dane for the elves, Dvalin for the dwarves, and Asvith for the giants. I carved some myself. That's it. This particular translation is Jackson Crawford's translation. And I first personally learned about Jackson Crawford. I actually was listening to this other podcast, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was spectacular.
You lie. I told you about him.
No, I learned about it after. No, you and I talked about it after I had been listening to this Northern Myths podcast. And then you started talking about Jackson Crawford. And I was like, oh my God, I heard about this guy. So I was like, okay, great. But I think I had already purchased this by then. Like I bought this.
I'd like to thank the YouTube algorithm for randomly putting him out. And he was my bedtime material for like 2 years there.
Really? When did you,
Yeah.
When was that?
That was like right after I got back from... Well, no, because I was with Meg. So this was before I went to Flagstaff.
So for a long time then. That was a while.
That was back 2016.
The Jackson Crawford translation is supposedly just superior in every way, as far as I know. He
has a YouTube channel, and it is prime. It is so good.
Good.
Yeah, he goes over all of his works. He breaks down like different points of view on like how he views the runes, how they were used, common etiquette, and sorry to cut you off, but
no,
I just thought that was good to plug in too.
Yeah, definitely. I like the fact that he does make an effort to sort of explain the kennings. And in the Poetic Edda, a kenning is kind of like wordplay, sort of. And it's beyond our modern, especially our American modern comprehension, because you would have to have been part of the culture to really understand what the dual meaning of the kenning was. And we just don't have that context. So the kenning would go right over our head. But he makes an effort to sort of explain that in some places, which is really interesting.
Ancient memes.
And um, so I like, honestly, the only translation I've ever read is the Jackson Crawford, and I really miss those dudes on the Northern Myths podcast because they went through line by line analyzing. They started with the Poetic Edda. This was like 7 years ago, and I really really enjoyed what they did with that. And I think I will check out Mr. Crawford's YouTube. That sounds actually really cool.
I'll send you the link, and you can put it in
Yeah,
the sources for this.
definitely. Definitely. A lot of what we have from the Poetic Edda was only written down within like 1,000 years. Like some of it may have been oral tradition that was much older, but it was one particular person, and I think it was Snorri Sturluson. Is that right, Cameron? Who was the guy who wrote most of these down, and he was Christian, if I understand that correctly, and did sort of write things from his own personal Christian bias here and there. And there was some, they think there were some additions that he made, and there were some things that they think that he maybe invented or added to the text to kind of spice it up. So while the Poetic Edda is old and is probably based on oral tradition, it in itself can't really be used as gospel of anything beyond that 1,000 years, because we can't know for sure what was added, what was changed, what was edited.
But it would be the closest to the
Hmm.
source material because this was in Iceland, right? So they didn't really get a lot of the persecution that other places did from the Christians.
I
It
don't know.
wasn't
Was it in
it
Iceland? I
wasn't
don't know.
as locked down.
Okay, that's
Like
good to know.
they had the fourth conversion. They I don't I don't know how far they went, but it's at least in my mind that it's been like they weren't directly enforced with like Roman rule or anything like that. They
Hmm.
were kind of more culturally influenced by Christianity than like what am I thinking here? They didn't have the harsh penalties, I don't think.
Okay. And to be honest, that's a place where I don't have a lot of knowledge. So, I mean, there's just so much that could be learned and studied about the area. It would take an expert like Jackson Crawford to really break it down. What is interesting to me most about the Poetic Edda, and this particularly Odin's ordeal, but also some other things that can be seen throughout the text. There's a lot of references in the Edda that are very familiar to my practice, that sort of echo a kind of shamanic feeling. We're specifically talking about the Havamal today, but there are places in the Voluspa where it's just like, dang, like Odin, I think he was a shaman. I really do. I think that there was some animistic shamanic style type of work that he was doing there that he had learned from other peoples. And he's just maybe the most famous, the one who was written about. But in the Havamal, the one that you just heard, he talks about I hung on a wind-battered tree 9 long nights, pierced by a spear and given to Odin, myself to myself, on that tree whose roots grow in a place no one has ever seen. And I believe that that reference is Yggdrasil, the world tree, which is a mythological ash, right? It's an ash tree, I think,
Yeah.
that upon which the many realms of the world live within its branches and its roots, within it and below it and above it, which to me is always very much like the imagery and the iconography that comes with my understanding of what we call in my practice the axis mundi, which is this kind of portal. It's a kind of liminal space that you can reach, which takes you to the lower world and can take you to the upper world, these places where you can meet with spirits and have conversations and get a lot of knowledge from these spirits. So, I mean, that's one place. And then there's this other thing. 9 long nights, he says. No one gave me food, no one gave me drink, pierced by a spear.
And
He
9, it also signifies, as a footnote, he explains 9 is a sacred Norse number of completeness. So he's talking about the complete self-sacrifice where he was just there on the brink of death, in that liminal space between life and death,
mm-hmm.
self-inflicted, and he found himself right there at the cusp, and that's when he looked down at the roots and began to see the elder runes.
The elder
He
Futhak.
took the runes up, screaming, "I took them," then I fell back from the tree, or fell down from the tree, however you wanted to interpret that. And so it's, like you were saying, it kind of has that shamanistic practice of the fasting, the
Mm-hmm.
self-enforced sacrifice, till you're
That
kind of right there in between.
it's like he died. It's like that self ego death. And so, like in this translation, given to Odin, myself to myself. So I've done this to myself. It almost speaks to me almost like a gift. Like I've killed myself. I've done this to myself, given to me. This is something I've done for myself, not inflicted. Like the choice of word given to me means a lot. You give a gift, you inflict wounds. So the fact that he's saying given to myself, I've done this great service to myself by making this sacrifice, by allowing this death. And what he gained from that was the runes. I like the fact that you talk about 9. I didn't know that. That's very interesting. In, let me think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 directions. So I always wondered if that 9 harkens somehow to some of their mythology about the different realms. I am curious to know. I don't remember off the top of my head in the cosmology how many realms existed within the roots of Yggdrasil.
In the movie, I know there was 7, but I'm pretty sure I don't think
Well,
that's
yeah, the
accurate.
movie can't be a good. We can't use the movie, but yeah. So I mean, that's just an interesting thing. So yeah, and then I fell. He says I learned 9 spells from the famous son of Bolthorn, the father of Bestla. I had to look that up because I didn't actually know who these people were. Bestla is Odin's mother. Bolthorn is his grandfather. So when he says, I learned nine spells from the famous son of Bolthorn, the father of Bestla. So it's like he's saying, I learned 9 spells from myself. So
Is that right? Because I thought it was a giant, and like the
Bolthorn
god
is
of
a
giants.
giant. So Bolthorn is a giant, and he
I
had a
didn't
daughter
realize that
named
was his
Bestla,
mom.
and Bestla is Odin's mother.
That part was lost in my research.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the idea was that he was willing to take knowledge from anywhere at any cost,
Yes,
which
that was.
is a taboo for them. That was the part that I was going to get,
I
because
didn't know that.
especially for males, for men, it's not something you would practice. Especially in little jumping ahead here, he gets the runes as the primordial forces, and he practices the magic, which
That was a female art.
Scyther. Scyther is
Oh, Sather,
their
yeah.
Scyther. Yes, that's their magic. That's an art. That's a poetry. Men don't typically practice poetry, but he did, and so he was the first one to sort of pave the way for
Men.
males in magic, and that was a way to gain power and to encourage his troops and
Mm-hmm.
to shape fate.
Well, it was an obsession. He felt like the way to protect and the way to keep everything that he held dear safe was to learn as much as possible. And so he would do that, and he paid any price. You're right, like he would do anything. So he literally did this.
Well, first, hold on. They say you practice Sedir on Samsoy, beating the drum like a seeress do. In the likeness of a witch, you mingled with mankind. I call that a pervert's nature. Jackson
Where,
Crawford, 2015, and that was a I guess Loki making fun of Odin.
that's funny. I've never. Where is that from? What poem is that in the Poetic Edda?
The Lokasana.
It's really funny. But that gives you a clue, like how taboo it was.
Yeah, he's
Odin
calling
was
him
the
gay.
first. Yeah, and he's like, this is women's work. What
What
are
are
you
you
doing? This is
You gonna
unnatural.
wear a
But then
dress now?
fucking Loki became a female horse and then went ahead and got it
Yeah,
on
but
with.
they gave him crap about everything he did, so he didn't care. He didn't care either.
No, but he's
But
gonna give other people shit for it.
yeah,
Come on,
oh,
Loki.
look at this tough guy.
Okay, so please, let's go back. I'm
Okay,
trying to go through like section by section. So I learned 9 spells from the famous son of Bolthorn, the father of Besla. So I learned 9 spells from myself. So it kind of almost brings to mind imagery of, I almost see a man wearing a patch who walks into a space, and then across from him a reflection of himself comes forward and says, here is the spells that you need to learn. Like, there's something so, I don't know, there's something so like ethereal and dreamy about the way that it's written. And it's that again, that sort of emphasis on, I have done this for myself. The knowledge comes from within. Basically, it came from inside of me, which would be technically how you achieve that information. I mean, a spirit gives it, but it comes, in order to find it, you have to seek it from within. So he learned these 9 spells
you seek
from
it from within,
himself.
and nothing on the outside can encourage or discourage your search for that. No
Yeah.
price, including masculinity, is too high for wisdom or control of fate.
Where is that
Is
from?
that is just something Crawford hinted at when he was talking about, well, actually, the Loki's accusation against Odin. He
Hmm.
said Odin didn't care. He
Yeah.
did this because he wanted to. He had that internal drive. That was just something that he was after. He just
Mm-hmm.
needed to. I wasn't there a story that led to this though?
There was a long. The Havamal is
Because
long. It's not
there
short.
there was the story about how Odin dies, like the Ragnarok.
That, I think you're talking about the Voluspa, which is a separate poem.
Well, yeah, but that I think led to this. It's
Um,
kind of cyclical. So he wanted to get more and more power because he basically heard the cliff notes of his own demise, and he wanted to figure out, okay, how do I get ahead of this? How do I shape my fate? How do
right.
I
So in the
become a
Voluspa,
more powerful god?
he summons a witch. He summons a seeress. and and it sounds kind of like it was maybe a kind of, I don't know, maybe a necromancy or something, but he speaks to the dead, this dead witch, a very powerful witch, and she knows everything, and he tests her a little bit, and she comes back with, I know where you hid your eye, and talks to him about the well of Mimer, and talks to him about the secret ways that he gets his knowledge. So she's able to prove herself that way. And then she tells him the full story of Ragnarok and the end of the world. That's the Voluspa, and that is also a very long poem. And at least in Jackson Crawford's book, the Voluspa does come before the Havamal, but they are 2 separate poems. The Havamal is interesting because it's a large collection of like stories of ways that Odin kind of conducts himself, things that he's done, escapades with giants, wisdom contests, like just kinds of different things, rules about how to be a good host, and just being proper and upright in the world. And then, like, so it's like kind of boring, honestly. The Havamal to me is a little bit boring. But then all of a sudden, he just sort of, he's talking about giants, Lofafnir, or Lodfafnir. He's talking to Lodfafnir, and then all of a sudden, boom, he starts to talk about this trial that he put himself through. So he's telling this person, Lodfafnir, if you take my advice, you'll profit if you learn from it. It'll do you good if you remember it. When you drink beer, choose the might of the earth, for the earth is good against beer, and fire against sickness, oak against an irritable bowel, wheat against magic, an elder tree against family quarrels, maggots against venomous bites, runes against distress, ground against water. Swear your hate beneath the moon. And then, bam, all of a sudden, Havamal from the way, or like that, the Odin's trial from the clip that I have said, where he talks about there's like no clean transition. It's really interesting. So he so your speculation, yes, probably in Odin's thirst and never-ending quest for knowledge, he wants to know how the world ends. He asks the witch, and the witch tells him what is the sequence of events. Did he learn the runes first, or did he talk to the witch and learn about Ragnarok first, and then sought the runes as some kind of means to prevent Ragnarok? Was Ragnarok the impetus for all of his knowledge seeking? I don't know. I genuinely don't know that. Do you know?
No.
I don't know what came first.
I mean, it seems like a little bit of here and there. Like he already had a thirst, and then he had this event that really pushed him. Like, oh, well, then I really have to knuckle down and I have to get stronger. I
Mm-hmm.
have to prepare. And it's almost like you can see the different stages of grief in his story.
Interesting. Yeah. Huh.
Because towards the end, he does kind of accept it. And in the story of Ragnarok, he even kind of coaches the new god, which is sort of speculated to be himself reborn.
Mm-hmm. I see Ragnarok as being sort of a, I don't, it's a wheel. I mean, it's, the Ouroboros. It's the cycle, it's the calendar, the snake that eats itself, you know. And even the way that Ragnarok happens, yes, there's the end of the world, there's a great calamity, people die, but then it's all reborn again, and
Mm-hmm.
then eventually it starts anew. So it's, I don't know, all very interesting. He talks about, I want a drink of that precious mead poured from Othrerir, which I also didn't know what that was. Apparently, Othrerir is the name of a vessel, a kind of cup, symbolically metaphor for poetry. What is it called? Mead of poetry. So Odin drinks from the mead of poetry, which what helps him with his thinking, helps him with his speaking. I don't know. This
Well,
is
I
when
think
I
this is
was.
another one of those where it's the wine of poetry. I mean, so like when you're drinking from the mead of poetry, you're talking about listening to people's art.
Yeah. Interesting.
So he
That's a
wants
good
to
point.
hear those fabled tales. He wants to explore these fantasies with these other soothsayers, these other
Wise women.
word crafters, you know.
Yeah. So, so that thing with the precious mead poured from Othrerir, there is speculation that that was an invention from Snorri Sturluson. That might have been something that he added, but I don't know. But it complements it very well. And then he says, my imagination expanded. I became wise. I grew and I thrived. One word chased another word, flowing from my mouth. One deed chased another deed, flowing from my hands. And that's some beautiful imagery too. Like he became to me it speaks of like the muse of creation. So he drank from the mead of Othradir, and then suddenly he was just pouring out knowledge. He was pouring out, like, just like you were saying, like he listened and he was able to create. He was able to produce these beautiful, wise things, which also speaks to me a little bit of ecstatic trance, of like shamanic ecstatic trance, where he
So that
reached this
was,
state
I'm
of
sorry.
clear-mindedness where he could just, it was just pouring out of him.
So that
Where
was
he,
stanza 140, where he says that he had drawn from Ordeal.
mm-hmm,
And in stanza 141, then I began to grow, be wise, to grow and become fruitful. One word led to another, one deed led to another deed. So yes, it's the fire that breeds more fire within a
mm,
person's soul. He's he wants to, yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. The meat of poetry, he's tying it sacrifice to poetic inspiration. So he did this to sort of commune with himself. He was fasting. He said he was on that tree for 9 long nights, wounded with a spear dedicated to Odin, myself on that tree, of which no man knows where its roots run. No bread did they give me, nor horn did I drink. I peered down and seized up the runes, screaming I grasped them, then I fell back from the tree. So he's talking about he withheld from food and drink. It's a standard ritual fasting that we
mm-hmm,
both know about.
mm-hmm.
He seized up the runes, and the runes weren't just letters at that point. He literally saw them in the roots of the tree, as if he saw patterns from the natural roots that were growing. And then he sort of picked out here and there
That's cool. I
what
never
they
considered that.
meant. So sort of like almost like he's hallucinating, but he drew meaning
Yeah.
from the natural sources around him.
Mm-hmm.
Seized up the runes, and the runes are not letters at this point. They're primordial forces. So they're not recognized
Mm.
as letters. They're recognized as concepts.
That kind of makes sense, because if you actually study the runes, it's not like a single word. It's like a collection of ideas. Like one symbol represents almost like a feeling, almost like a concept, which is loose and can be very complicated and ambiguous. So that's actually, that makes a lot of sense.
Picked them out and was able to write entire stories. One word led to another. And
9 spells.
from those words became deeds. And one
Mm-hmm.
deed led to another deed. So these words are spells, but not in the way that is like Hollywood depicted.
Yeah.
They are spells that influence other people, whether they know it or not. And so words do affect reality in deeds,
Mm-hmm.
in actionable deeds performed. Would you have done this thing had he not said that? And so in that way, he's able to shape his fate and the fates of those around him through words alone. And that's the power of his spell casting.
And that's what Odin's famous for, too, is his great wit, is his ability to stand up to others. And he was always testing himself in that way, always looking for another adversary to try himself against. Um, so then in stanza 142, he says, "You will find runes, runic letters to read, great runes, powerful runes, which Odin painted, the holy gods made, and Odin carved." So it's again another weird thing. Like he's telling the story, but he's talking about himself kind of in the third person. This other aspect of myself painted them. The holy gods created them, and then he carved them. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just, again, that really interesting imagery. And it flows so well with what you said about, like, if he was on the brink of death and he was staring at the roots of the tree and he saw these lines of the roots and said, oh my God. And then he had that strong sensation of this one means this concept, that one means that concept. Then the gods made it. The holy gods made that. It was inspired by the perfection, the natural perfection of Yggdrasil. And so this other aspect of himself kind of, what's the word, cemented it and brought it forward so that it could be teachable to others.
Myself to myself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's weird here, I'm not super sure how to take stanza 143. Odin carved for the gods, meaning, in this instance, I take this to mean, sometimes I think elves, dwarves, giants have meanings, and I think I learned this from the Northern Myths podcast. Giant was a way that they described outsiders, people from other countries, the giants. So I've always wondered if, the dwarves, the elves, and the giants, and then the gods, if they considered themselves gods, but they were actually human. You know what I mean? So, like, Odin carved for the gods, and by that he means his tribe, his people. They are the gods. Then the Dane for the elves. So, did they consider elves Danish people? Were the Danish people elves? The Danes carved it for the elves. Dvalin for the dwarves, another tribe of people. And Asvith for the giants, another tribe of people. And they actually even have like a directionality of where they exist, kind of in space, like geographically, almost like a kind of a wheel. So I'm just curious. I'm not sure what to make of this little stanza. And then he says, I carved some. So Odin carved for the gods. And then at the very end, he says, I carved some myself. What do you make of that stanza?
And then I carved some myself. So whereas he's attributing it to these things just came to me, and then I carved some myself. So I saw these roots and the meaning was evident, and then I carved some myself. So the other ones weren't so evident, but he maybe took liberties. So in that moment, it was more of a conscious. I made these myself.
Do you think it could be like a reference between the elder Futhark and the younger Futhark?
Could be. I mean, or this was written well after, so.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't super know what to make of this particular stanza. But then the last stanza, stanza 144, he has 8 different questions. 8 questions. When in everything else, it was 9.
And it's often attributed to the 9 questions when there's only 8.
So, which one is missing and why is it missing? So, and I keep thinking, like, I'm so glad that you said that, Cameron, because this whole time I'm like, no. One of them is missing. There is one missing here. Which one is the one that's missing? It's 9 nights. It's 9 spells. It's, it's the different realms. But then he asks 8 questions. Well, no, that's not right. Something is missing here. And the 8 questions are, do you know how to write them? Do you know how to read them? Do you know how to paint them? Do you know how to test them? Do you know how to ask them? Do you know how to bless them? Do you know how to send them? Do you know how to offer them? And so it's almost like a kind of, these are the spells, I think. These questions, I think, are clues about what the nature of those 9 spells are, in my opinion. These 9 spells that he taught himself. So which one is the 9th? What is missing here?
I thought the same thing. I was like, well, why is there only 8 here?
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. In the context of everything else, it just doesn't fit.
Unless you're supposed to pursue that knowledge, what would the 9th question be?
I wondered that too. Is it a teaser, and that's one that you're supposed to find for yourself after a lifetime of study and figuring out the other 8, of answering the other 8 questions? And maybe the 9th question is, what is the 9th question? What else is there to learn?
So I made notes on what they were. So the rista, carve, cut, and size, the physical act of scratching the runes into the wood. The rada, read, interpret, or solve. You must be able to understand the signs that you carved, or else it's not going to do anything for you. The fa, you have to paint, stain, color, or prepare and supply the runes. So it's the act of preparation, that getting yourself mentally ready by physically doing a thing. Frista, test, try, or prove. You have to make a connection with these words. You have to use it and make sure that you have it. Like, when I use this, this is what I typically am trying to do. This is what I see the effect of it is.
Hmm. What's your intention?
The Bioja, ask, invoke, pray. You speak the accompanying Galder or the chant and petition the powers behind the runes. So you have to, again, it's a way to sort of mentally prepare yourself for this. So by chanting, you're kind of repeating this thing to get you in the right headspace before you're trying to invoke the rune. Blota is worship, consecrate, or sacrifice. You have to dedicate the runes, usually by drinking or with animal meats. So
Hmm.
it's just sort of a way to make it more of a ritual that way. Ascenda is send or dispatch. It's releasing the spell towards the target. You have to know how do you do that? How do you activate the rune? And that's usually something you would find with the Frista by testing, try, and prove. So how would you activate or send? You would know that if you use the rune in day-to-day practice.
Hmm.
The Soya offer up to make a sacrifice by soaking or drenching. It's usually with Sayona is seethe or boil. So it's a final dedication or immersion, symbolically soaking the rune, perhaps in blood or in the ale that you were partaking in the worship or consecration. It's a way to irrevocably commit. So it's a way to finalize the spell that you were trying to do. So a lot of modern pagans will just burn the paper. I think that's the same practice.
Hmm.
So you burn the paper when you're done, and that's a way to sort of finalize the action. There's no going back from this.
Interesting.
And so why were there 8, not 9? They A lot of what I found was that they're not sure.
So other people noticed this. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
just you and me. Okay.
Scholars think the poet wanted a perfect 9-step liturgy to try to echo the poem's many nines. And so they call it the 9 questions. The Vistjuv, I'm pretty sure I'm not pronouncing that right.
Hey, can you type it? Maybe I can take a stab at it. I have
HUV with the upwards accent mark over the E.
HU
HVE. I'm sorry, HVE.
HVE.
With the upwards accent mark above the E.
Okay. And then what's next?
That's it.
Fe.
Is that it?
I think Fe. I'm not sure though. Probably depends on which Nordic country you're from.
And so the liturgy is because each one ends with an A. So it should end with kind of a roughly the same pronunciation when you say, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you do that? And it's each one sort of sounds the same, but it has a different. It's like the same path with a different. It's the same destination with a different path.
Hmm.
And so they stuck with that for this. So that's what kind of brings this back into an ancient poem. Is the cadence of it and the fact that each line rhymes.
Hmm. Interesting. See, and that's more context that we don't have because we don't speak the original language. So we can't really grasp the rhythm of it and yeah, the cadence, the rhythm, the flow. There is that piece that's missing for us. So we're reliant on these translations, which I do think Jackson Crawford did a pretty good job. Like it's very imagery heavy for me. Like I get a sense, like I feel like I get a pretty strong sense of what it is that's going on, but it's really a shame to not be able to speak the original language. I have in the past fantasized about learning I'm not sure exactly which language. Icelandic, Danish, Finnish, I don't know. Swedish, all in the name. I want to say Danish was the original language it was written in, but I could be wrong. Please don't come at me, friends and relatives.
Little do
But
you know, Jackson Crawford's going to find our podcast and be like, well, you guys got all of that wrong.
I don't
Don't
know.
quote my work again.
I felt a little bit vindicated when I was talking about something, and then you mentioned a note from Jackson Crawford. I was like, "Ha! That's what I said. I'm not an idiot." Yes. So I don't know. So I consider that the end of Odin's ordeal, because then he goes on to offer more random advice. So then he talks about it's better not to pray at all than to pray too much. So a little bit more of his homilies and his words of wisdom, blah blah blah. And then in stanza 146 all the way through 163, he goes on to recite 18 different spells. So I don't feel like this trial, this Odin's, I'm calling it Odin's ordeal. These stanzas, stanza 138 through 144, feel shoehorned into a collection of sayings and wisdoms that shouldn't be there. It feels a lot like it should be on its own. It should be a standalone poem and not in with all of the rest of this nonsense in the Havamal.
Well, in one of my dreams with the Morrigan, she told me to be careful to not put too much weight into the words of other people, including old teachings. Don't follow any gurus or anything like that type of thing. To sort of seek the answers for yourself. And it kind of echoes back to everything you've learned, everything that this has talked about Odin did. I think that's the key. You have to find the answers yourself. No outside influences can impact the way you find truth, because the truth should ring clear anyway.
That's like perfect. That's exactly what Odin was saying, right? I give this from myself to myself. Dude, you're so smart, Cameron. Yeah. And so she said that to you, and you feel like that was
Which
the lesson.
Actually kind of hindered a lot of my growth, because I didn't really look into anything. I just sort of thought about stuff. I didn't fast. I didn't really do any horrible sacrifices. I just sort of thought about things as they came, and I learned from life and tried to put practices in place without any real sacrifice, without any real liminal space. There was no liminal space. There was a couple of times where I was really sick and thought that I was dying, but I didn't get any truth from that. In fact, I usually waved that off as like a fever dream. But
yeah,
looking back, there were some of those instances that did shape me, and I probably could have learned more had I seen what other people did. But it protected me from the whims of the masses, but it also stopped me from listening to myself.
My teacher, it's actually one of the favorite things he says. It's one of my favorite things because it's perfect. He talks about, like, we go through rules when we set the container, and we talk about, what are things that you need to feel safe and can be vulnerable and can really open up and do the work here. And we all create rules with each other. It's called setting the container. And the last and final rule that he always says is never believe a single word that I say. And what he means by that is not that he's a big, fat, dirty liar, but that he's just speaking from his own experience. It's not truth, and you shouldn't take it as truth. Hear what he says, measure it out, hold it to yourself, evaluate it against what you know and the other things that you're learning, and discard the things that don't make sense. Don't blindly follow. Find for yourself what the truth is. He's offering a perspective and nothing more, which is one of my favorite things. And I think that we would all do well. Like gurus and people, these new age people who do these things, and it's not just new age, it's all over the place. These people say, I know the way, and it's like a big control freak thing. My way is the way, and that's my then I know that it's not true. I know. That's always the first thing. It, from myself to myself. I agree wholeheartedly, Cameron. That's how you figure it out. That's how you learn what's true.
That also does mean listening to other people to build your own opinions. Took me a lot longer to learn that part.
All right. Well, this was fun, and I'm really glad to have gotten your. I learned some new things from listening to you, Cameron. So this was really cool. I'm glad that we did this. Did you have any other parting thoughts?
Do you think he would believe in meme magic?
Meme magic? I mean, maybe he would, because words have power, right?
Actually, yeah, I do think so.
Memes shape and influence the way we think about things and the way that the masses think about things. So in some aspect, there is power there.
From what I can tell, though, he didn't really go off of imagery. He didn't work too much with imagery. He did words, spoken and written words. So I do think that he would sort of be...
He'd be a singer.
Withheld from that, but yeah.
He'd be a poet.
More likely be a... He'd just stick with the bard thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this little reflection on the Havamal and Odin's ordeal. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking to you, Cameron. All right. Murderers, wanderers, whichever you prefer. We'll talk to you next time. See ya. This has been another episode of
The Wandering Crow.
Hey.
There's only two of us.
Did it.
No, we didn't.
Even when it was just two of us, we never got it right.